Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's episode of Unplugged with Ross. My name is Rosalind Miner. Tonight is a very interesting discussion. I am joined by my very good friend Doris Chella, and tonight's topic is talent acquisition, hiring for the future, trends, tech, and human touch. Now, everyone will have an opinion to give when it comes to talent acquisition. And some of us might deem or might say that we know how to do talent acquisition, but are we really doing it right? So before we get down to the conversation, as per the norm, I'd like to share some interesting insights on what the future of talent acquisition looks like. Okay. Many of the manual repetitive tasks, resume filtering, scheduling interviews, preliminary screening will be handled by automation, freeing up recruiters to focus on strategy and people. So a lot of the manual work that is currently happening in talent acquisition for the future demands for automation. When it comes to skill-based hiring over degrees, continuous learning, upskilling, reskilling becomes part of regular workforce conversation. So it's not just an aspect of do you have a degree, do you have a master's? It is can you actually get the job done? Yeah. When it comes to aspects of diversity, inclusion of remote employees, people from non-traditional backgrounds, people with transferable skills will increase. Now, a lot of people have an opinion on the current way of working, remote working, hybrid working, on office working. So that's a discussion we will definitely touch about. And last but not least, when it comes to ethics, privacy, and fairness, as AI tools become more involved, screening, interviewing, evaluating, concerns about bias, fairness, data privacy will increase. Organizations will need clear ethical frameworks. So that's what the future will be demanding, will become the norm. And that's actually the least we can do in the present day and age. So join me in welcoming my very good friend Doris. And I am so looking forward to this conversation because it will be, best in class what we need to do when it comes to talent acquisition and a bit of controversy. And I do love a good discussion. So Doris, karibu sana.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Rosalind.
Yeah. So good
Yeah.
to have you here and have you give us a really good overview of what good talent acquisition is about, how we can balance the current trends, yeah, how do we take advantage of tech, and how do we not lose that human touch. Karibu.
Asante sana. Thank you for having me. Great. Where do I start? I think maybe a good place to start, and Rosalind, you can chime in at any point, is I know one of the questions you had asked me, I think, give me a minute, let me look at it. We had posed that maybe the hiring landscape has changed drastically over the last few years. First, there was the pandemic, which shifted how we all think about what work is and how work can be done. To now AI, which is a completely different way of even doing the work. And I guess a good place to start is just the question around what's the biggest shift I've seen in how organizations hire today. I think that's what I'd probably love to start from. When they say everything has changed, but everything is the same, that's how I feel every day when I hire.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so the shifts I've seen, especially from an organizational perspective, is you don't have. It's more the skill set that has changed. How people hire it hasn't really changed as much, especially in these parts of the world. And I really want to speak about our parts of the world because our nuances are a bit different. You're working in an environment where talent is, talent can be found, quote unquote, found every corner of the continent. So you're dealing with a place where there's a surplus supply of talent vis-a-vis probably places in the States or the Europe where you're actually there's a shortage of that supply. So for Kenya and especially for East Africa, I have how we find talent is really still traditional. I don't think I have seen lips of how technology is helping us. What I've seen change is the skill set. So there's quite a skill set that have become so central to how organizations are hiring. And I think it's just been brought about by the last 5 years of how the world has changed. We used to talk about VUCA, but I think for 10 years, the first time I had VUCA, I think it was 2012 or 2011. But the last 5 years have really proven that it's volatile and it can change very quickly. And so more and more, I'm seeing clients looking for someone who has worked in finance, has worked in sales. It's actually the agility. It's a mental agility. It's a learning agility. It's a flexible mindset. It's a fluid intelligence that for me has probably become one key skill set. And obviously the one is just analytical thinking, which I think we'll go through in a bit. But how we hire in this part of the world, I haven't seen any significant change. Yes, that's what I'd say. Yeah.
I think when you talk about fluidity when it comes to skill set, I don't think a lot of the organizations are at a place of embracing that. When you are based in HR is your forte. You will hardly ever find yourself having a bit of ops where you can actually morph into a COO. You are just, sorry to say, just stuck into HR. If it's finance, it's finance. I think we also need to change, or yeah, I think we need to change our EVP or how we are, managing talent within the organization. It's one thing getting it, but how is it that we are grooming them within the organization to help them stay?
To help them stay. And that's an interesting one. And I think also as recruiters, we have a big responsibility there. And I think I had done there's a post I'd done about wildcards. Um, and I have a client. So I think as a recruiter, your responsibility, once you understand and distill a role to its essence. Once you're very, very clear about the outcome of the role and therefore, so the skills that would come with this outcome, it's very easy for you to help your surface candidates that are experience aside, the outcome becomes central. But I think let's also be honest as recruiters, that's more work because you need to think, you need to analyze, and then decide, okay, this candidate has not done this before, but the outcomes they're showing me actually are very much related to what my hiring manager is looking for. But because we don't do enough work distilling a role to its essence, to really scrap everything off, years of experience, education, and really say, what is the outcome? What do you want this person to do? And what skills are related to this outcome? And then we are not able to share enough wildcards. I always say as a recruiter, if you can't share one or two wildcards with your hiring manager, you're not doing your job well because they're also expecting you to. Our role is now that to surface candidates that probably they would not have thought about, but our role is to distill it in that sense. And so I think there's also a responsibility for recruiters because when I do surface candidates, and I think there's even one that has been hired, a branch manager in one of my clients who had never been a branch manager before, but had run their family business. And based on the outcomes she had gotten out of that family business, it's exactly what my client was looking for. And it was very simple to say, listen, you trust us. We know what you hire. Speak to this girl and let me know what you think. And they hired her. So it's split responsibility. We also need to take a few chances as recruiters to help surface some of those candidates, but also you need to have a hiring manager who has a very open mind. Yeah, so I guess it's a balance of both.
Now, as an external, recruiter, you have the out of the box thinking, but then there is the one who is within the organization, who is box standard, and it's not often that they will think out of the box and think, hold up, I think I have the right candidate for you, but enabling the various stakeholders to actually see the gem that they are seeing. How can you challenge, an in-house recruiter vis-a-vis an external recruiter? How can you challenge the thinking, the mindset? What are those things that you would perceive are the bare minimum when it comes to a good recruiter?
I think I can't stress this enough. I don't think recruiters understand what they're hiring for. I've always said this. I don't think they start with outcomes. I don't think enough of us, even me, before I struggled with the rules and I didn't understand why are these guys rejecting my candidates. I never used to start with outcomes, to the essence of what does this role actually, what is it supposed to deliver? What problems is it supposed to solve? Who in the market has solved this problem before? That's really the essence of a job. You're trying to help hire someone to solve a problem. I think the recruiters, even in town, I have some amazing internal recruiters who don't even use external recruiters because they don't need to, they understand business. I think for as long as recruiters, we are not spending time understanding what problem is this role trying to solve. Because when I ask, so I do hiring audits, right? And when I ask a recruiter, so walk me through your hiring process. It's always manager sends me the JD. I go on a call for 5 to 10 minutes, and that's it. And I started sending CVs. 25 CVs later, manager frustrated hires the next closest thing to what they were looking for. 3 months later, it just becomes this vicious cycle. But it's because it's easy. It's easy that way for you to be able to spend time. I would almost say you need to spend at least 2 hours with a hiring manager to actually decide that you know that role, even when you're internal. Yeah, and I don't know how many recruiters are able to do that. Yeah, and also they just have 30 roles at any one point. There's no time.
I couldn't agree more, and it actually brings up the point of a lot of organizations design roles for the sake of designing the role, but not really for the value that role is bringing to the table. And that's why I think sometimes you will find duplication of roles. And through the duplication of roles, there's that frustration, and people are thinking, okay, there's nothing much for me here. I'm not growing, I'm not expanding, because someone was recruited, but they really didn't think through the why and what solution is being brought to the table. So, which brings me to the next question. Do you think the traditional hiring playbook, CVs, interviews, reference checks, still work? Or is it time we completely rewrite the process?
I think the ingredients will never change. We just need to change the recipe. I think CVs have been with us for 500 years. They're not going anywhere. They're our signal.
Yeah.
Okay. Interviews are not about to leave, whether we like it or not. There's still a sense of control people want to feel, but also I want to speak to someone. I want to feel responsibility for the person I brought in. I think that's not going to change. But I think the recipe is what we need to change. For example, let's start with CVs, right? In a market where, if you think about it from a cooking perspective, one of the first ingredients you probably put in, the main ingredients, let's say the protein would be the CV, right?
Yeah.
But with the advent of AI, with the advent of just technology, digital native candidates, they will produce a near perfect CV for you, right? Let's not even talk ethics. Let's just talk. They know how to craft and structure a CV to fit what you're looking for. Okay. And so if you rely on that as a signal for hiring, you're going to go down very, very quickly. Like you're going to find 100 perfect candidates, but when you bring them to the job, there's nothing happening. So I would almost say a CV should be a map, right?
Yeah.
And not the territory. So we almost need to use it as just a map to help us understand a little bit, but not too much, because you need to add a bit more details to that. So CVs will never change. I don't think they're leaving anytime soon. I think they're here. The other one, for example, is interviews. I don't foresee a time when, and I want to speak for these parts of the world where, yes, we like efficiency, but we also want the human touch. And I don't know other parts of that. I don't know any human who would want to be hired using a machine. I don't know, maybe my grandchildren. But for as long as I'm alive, the recipe is going to be that there will be an interview at some point,
Yeah.
right? And in terms of interview, for me, I think surfacing more structured ways of interviews, and I sing about this a lot, which is let your interviews be a bit more structured than just ad hoc, because I think we trust our instincts a bit too much when we're hiring. I always say hiring is like marketing. You know that everybody thinks they're a good marketer. It's like hiring. It's the same. We all think we are good in recruitment, and we are not. We're really bad at it. But it's almost like we have assumed that how bad can I be? I mean, I had my house girl, I have two, three people here. And then because we blame the person who underperformed as a wrong hire and not my hiring skills, we tend to think we're perfect. So having a bit more humility to say, by the way, I hired 5 guys last month. This year, 4 have left. There's only one common denominator, the hiring manager. And so looking inwardly, making sure that your interview process is a bit structured. So that's what I'd probably say. And you know me, do a bit more references. Call the ex. I can't tell you how many times. And for me, references is double pronged. Call the ex, call all the exes and the exes siblings, because you need to find out how you need to support the person when they onboard, but also you will get red flags. And whether we like it or not, I think it's hard to say, let's just pretend that nothing happened. Sometimes you get a red flag and it's like, okay, now I know signals and how to make sure this person aligns. But using references more than a bit more objectively than we are at the moment. Yeah. So as I said, the ingredients are the same. I think the recipe just needs to change a bit. Yeah.
Now, let's talk about the exes.
Yes.
It can be controversial. There are exes that are, you know, they are they're kind. They will give you an objective,
Yeah.
non-emotive, perspective about this individual. Then there is the ex that just won't let go. There's the ex that will never have anything positive to say. How do you balance that? Because people can leave a toxic place, and probability maybe the toxic work environment was not enabling enough for them to perform. At the same time, it doesn't mean that everyone that has an ex who is angry, that the ex is wrong. The individual could be the problem. So how does, as a recruiter, and especially for organizations that give you a letter and they will tell you, we would like to proceed with you, but subject to reference
Yeah.
checks.
They should.
Yeah. So how do we balance that? Because on one hand, you can receive a lot of bias. On the other hand, you can receive absolute gems that will tell you, this is the kind of individual that is coming on board. How do I, and I mean, support them?
I believe in references. For as a development, I consider myself more, I'd almost say HR stroke human development expert or officer, whichever way you want to call it.
Yeah.
I think I have never had a reference call. So let's say in Kazi Works over the last 1 year, 5 months, I've probably hired about maybe 20, I've placed about 20, I would say 20 to 25 employees. And each and every one of them, we have had references of their exes, but also their current hiring manager. At Kazi Works, we have to call your current hiring manager. There's no shortcut to it. We are calling your current hiring. And in fact, you will give us, so once you've been, whatever, you will give us permission to call your hiring manager. And hiring manager is where all the tea is. Like it's where you will get all the tea that you want. If they're unhappy, they will tell you. The role of the person doing the reference check is the most important. Have they been trained to conduct objective reference checks? Are they objective in their reference checks? Because if you're objective, it's very hard to get sidetracked by an emotional hiring manager. You're not calling and saying, how was this person? You're asking very specific questions around specific skill sets, around specific outcomes. Most people, so far, I haven't met someone who is not extremely objective when you're very, very specific on what you're looking for. So you don't go and say, okay, so I'll give an example. Say you're hiring for a CEO, and you know that the CEO, sorry, I'm trying to kill a mosquito. You know that the CEO is supposed to deliver maybe 2x revenue or maybe get into the general trade market because they're not very good at that market. When you get into that reference check, you're asking questions around that. Examples of how they delivered that. So very specific examples. You will be told things that they can't do. And I'm not saying you will not be told, but it's very hard for a hiring manager when you get very objective to not be able to say, yes, he delivered that. Yes, he'll be able to. This one I haven't tested. Yes. But listen, I am I don't know, maybe I've been lucky, but I've never had met a hiring manager, even people who had very acrimonious separation, that was not objective. And I'm not saying, in fact, we've had candidates who could not join because their hiring manager, the things they needed to do, the hiring manager said they can't do that. One, two, three, they can do this one. If you're hiring them for this, just know you guys are failed. And we had to tell the person, sorry, we can't hire you. I've had one incident of that happening. But most of the others, it still becomes positive. The feedback you get, you use for onboarding. Yeah.
Now, before I go to the next question, we have a commentary here from Asha. Looking for generalist compared to specialist, which was the trend 10 years ago. So I think that's to do with the fluidity of the skill sets. And also, for me, a role is not valid if it doesn't contribute to revenue growth, optimization, and customer experience. What are your thoughts on that?
So generalist and specialist. They will always be a generalist, they will always be a specialist. So for us to advance in AI, those are deep specialists, right?
Yeah,
So I don't think that is leaving anytime soon, but I do think at the higher levels you get the more all-rounded a person you need to be able to handle that. So I'll give you an example. I think I'm on my sixth or seventh CFO hire in manufacturing.
yeah,
I think one, two, four, seventh or eighth in the last 18 months. And the ones that seem to be selected are the ones who've done CFO, they've moved into supply chain a little bit, they've moved into production a bit. But the key and the core of them is still finance, but they've had a bit of exposure across all the other roles. Then they understand business, so they're more commercial,
yeah.
right? Would I call them generalists? Probably not. Would I call them specialists? They're probably 70% specialists and 30% generalists. So I would say there is a deep
There's a core.
domain expertise core
Yeah.
specialist. And then there's that person who is playing between I'm a technical, but I have 30% of business. And then there is me, I am just a generalist, I'm a jack of all trades. I can juggle and move one from one to another, which still works. Yeah. I don't necessarily think there's one skill that surpasses the other.
No, I like that the fact that despite the fact that maybe you are a finance specialist, you've taken the time to actually understand other functions within the organization, and that actually
Yeah.
makes you understand how those people think, what happens there, why the costs are the way they are, and therefore most definitely, if you are looking for that CFO that has had various touch points in various departments, you actually get a better, well rounded individual than just one who's just done CFO and only sat in the finance
Yes.
docket. Yeah.
Yeah. Because you're not looking for, as one of my CEOs, one of CEOs I work with told me, he's not looking for a gatekeeper for his money. He's looking for someone who says, here is what we can do, here is what we can't do, and here is why. Not just no, we don't have money. That's not what businesses that I talk. And I didn't know this. I thought finance were better than HR. Most finance people are just they're there to just keep the books clean and tidy, but not actually have that commercial mindset. It made me low key happy. I'm like, so HR, we're not the ones who are suffering with this problem because also HR is very compliance based. Apparently, finance is also yeah. So I digress, but yes, go ahead. There was another question the person had asked.
The other one was to do with a role is valid. Okay, the comment was for me, a role is not valid if it doesn't contribute to revenue growth, cost optimization, or customer experience.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that. And I think if you have that as your, I want to say compass, where I'm going in because I am there to either push, increase volume or
Yeah,
increase value, then I like that. If that's your compass, then you're probably going to be very, very successful because you're extremely clear that you will have a very tangible impact on the business outcome. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
couldn't agree more. Now, to the
Yeah.
next question. There's a lot of buzz around AI in recruitment, from screening to predictive analytics. In your view, what's real value versus hype when it comes to tech in hiring?
Wow. I say there's more hype than value. I so I This is an interesting one for me. I'm not bragging, but I
Mhm.
probably I use more AI than 90 or 80% of recruiters locally. We
Okay.
use AI for everything. Like every AI, every team member of mine has paid AI. We are on the paid version. Our sourcing tools are AI based, Airtable. Like we all try and play with it. We play with it every day. But I think where I see people hyping, I usually say, yeah, no, it's not going to give you candidates. And I'll start with sourcing. Let me start with, if you look at the hiring cycle, let's start with the first thing that hiring manager does is figure out, do I need to build, buy, or borrow talent, right? So for me, that is more of a personal conversation. It will most likely help you understand, can this be a full-time role? Can this be a part-time role? Can this be, do I need to just get a consultant to do this? Obviously, you need a framework to determine that. I don't think you can just feed in and say, but with a good framework, it should be able to very quickly tell you, build, do I buy, do I borrow, based on a few. Maybe I should build that framework. That it can do, and it will do it pretty well. The next thing that AI does really well is job ads. Again, even with job ads, you need a framework. You need to be able to have a very good guardrail for this is how we hire. This is how we view discrimination. This is how the words we like to use. This is so it you still need to get to almost have your own agent for helping you determine the kind of roles that you do. Like if you look at Kaziwak's ad, you will see all of them are extremely similar in what they say, how they say it. It's because of how we have fed our AI agents. There's a very clear structure for when a job ad is coming from Kazi, it should have this. So when a hiring manager gives us a job ad, the first thing we do is feed it into the agent and we ask it what is missing on this JD. And that's what will form the basis of our conversation with the hiring manager. So we would use, so they have not mentioned this, they have not mentioned this, they have not mentioned this. I've gone to ask them about why on, my brain, what's that site for salaries?
I'll join your brain on that.
The thing that tells you how much people are earning and whether an employer is good or bad. Someone said, what is it called? My brain has gone blank. It starts with a G.
Hold up.
Anyway,
Funny, the only G that came to mind is Gallop. And I know that is so wrong.
so they would go in and find if there are any news about it. Would go to LinkedIn and check where they hire from the most. So it can help with that, but there's a lot of work you have to do to help it help. So it can help you surface questions to help you with the hiring manager discussion so that you're being very, very clear on what the role looks like. That AI will do really, really
Yeah.
well, but again, with a lot of work. It will help you with sourcing signals. And I can't stress enough sourcing signals. It will not help you with sourcing. I'll tell you why it will not help you with sourcing. I am sure the first person who did an ATS
Yeah.
and they made people apply, they were like, sourcing is done. We don't need human beings. And now we know the success rate out of a job ad or an ATS is probably about 1%. Why? Because good candidates will still not apply. They don't want to get into a black hole of 1,000 applications. They're not interested. There are so many candidates I speak to, they're like, yeah, I saw that role, Iliona Yokazi. But they didn't apply. They're not interested. They want to be approached. They want to be sure that when they put their hat in the ring, they have a chance, right? So, but it can't help you with sourcing signals to tell you where you should look based on historically where this company hires from, based on what is happening in the environment, again, depending on what you feed in, right? So I'll give you an example. Currently, I'm trying to hire a marketing manager for clients, and they have a ridiculous. Can you hear me again? I think you'd lost me there, or am I back? Yes.
Yes, you're back.
They have a ridiculous budget. They don't care so much about where the person is coming from, but you must have handled the kind of budgets that they have. Where do we do? We go to AI. We ask AI, you tell us who in this market, which companies have ridiculous hiring budgets. Figure out billboards, and so those are the signals it will give you. It'll tell you here, I think here, these are, and it gave us a list of 20 companies that actually have they consider with high marketing budgets because of just how many billboards and how much Google ads they have in that. So those it will help. Now, what is hype? AI will not find unicorns while you sleep. There's no unicorns AI is finding. AI's role is to accelerate your clarity. It doesn't replace it. So if you are not clear from the beginning, it'll just give you garbage that you put in. And I think that's where we go wrong. So it's not there to help clean up your garbage. It's here, whatever you put, it accelerates it. So if you put garbage, it will accelerate your garbage. I think that's really the essence of it. Yeah.
Garbage in,
Um,
garbage out.
it's still the same. That hasn't changed. That has not changed. Again, the other one is using tech without sort of losing the human touch. I think again, ATSs, even before AI, there was applicant tracking system, there was job ads. That hasn't left. I know, me, I think I've only applied for one job in my life. One. I don't do well with interacting with machines. I just feel like if I can't talk to a human being directly, I'm not applying. And I have a feeling there are quite a few of us, right? Who just believe if someone wants me, they'll find me. But I'll go and talk to someone, right? And I've met quite a few candidates who are like, I don't apply to jobs. I don't believe in applying. I think it's beneath them, right? That doesn't change. So you still need to humanize my sense. I think you can automate admin, but there are so many aspects of it that you can humanize. But I think as AI gets more advanced, you still need human beings in two gates in hiring, two or three gates. The first gate is what I said, being very clear on the outcomes you want. That unless you have a super specific prompt for a particular job because you're producing volumes every month, that is not something you can outsource to AI. That is something you really need to sit down and see. So one human being has to be at that gate. I think the other human being has to be at the decision-making gate, which is five. We have three final candidates. What's our final analysis? I still think AI is biased in that, in too many ways. I think still humans have to to play a big part there. And then the last gate that human beings have to be is in the offer and onboarding. I don't know a place where we will completely outsource onboarding to AI and not have humans interacting with each other. Yeah, in that sense.
I
But can build for you, and we use AI to build really robust hiring frameworks for clients. But after that, then it's human to human. Yeah.
First things first. Yes, someone has actually provided feedback. Glassdoor. That's what you use.
Glassdoor.
Yeah,
Ooh, thank you.
yeah.
Yes, thank you.
But yes, I agree when it comes to the aspects that we can automate and we can take advantage or truly utilize AI. But there are aspects where never lose that human touch. And it's true. For example, the offer letter, the for example, final stage interview, the offer letter, the onboarding. In consideration that you will be working with humans, you just cannot delegate each and every process to automation. You still have to be there as a human to integrate that. So I think it's trying to get that fair balance of, okay, how can you make your work easier in terms of sourcing those candidates, ensuring that your what you're putting out there as your job advert actually allows you to get good candidates. Yes, you will get all manner of candidates, but at least you get quality candidates
Yeah.
and you select from that. But then yeah, we cannot lose that personal touch. Now,
Yes, and just on that, so something there. So some of the things that we also use AI in our team is we use it for scoring interviews. So it's almost like there's another. So if there was three people in the call, AI will be one panelist, and the two recruiters will be the other two panelists. So so it has a JD, it has the competencies, it has exactly everything it needs. So once we finish with the call, we dump read AI in there, the transcript, it will score, the recruiter will score. So remember, we are not so because we want different points of view. So three people are still scoring, and half the time AI is not right. I just want to make people understand that half the time
Yeah.
it doesn't pick nuances as much as we think it does. So a human will pick nuances, will pick body language, will pick so much more than AI will, because it's just decision making and judgment still really, I think, for a very long time will remain with us. Yeah. Sorry about that. Please go ahead.
No, no, no. Actually, that's a very good point. And especially, when we're talking about automation left, right, and center, I think people need to understand that AI has been fed by humans. It has been trained by
Yes.
humans. It's not perfect. And in as
Mhm.
much as it can be fed and it will understand different prompts, it's still not a human being where it can actually see and decipher more than, the techie AI stuff it can do. So yes, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk about skills, capabilities, and future readiness. Yeah. How should recruiters and hiring managers rethink their approach to assessing potential in candidates beyond experience or credentials?
Um, so there are signals in experience, and I don't want us to ignore experience, right? Because I think it's important. But we need to understand signals. How will you look at a CV and say and find signals there that will help you understand this candidate potentially would have a lot of potential within my business? So I don't think we are ignoring that. Years of experience to me, it has lost a lot of meaning and essence. Every day I'm proven wrong with years of experience. Every day I go into the market. In fact, I realize the older you are, the more crystallized intelligence is stuck, and you have completely lost your fluid intelligence. You're only thinking in templates and playbooks that are slowly dying out. Um, they used to say years of experience gives you maturity, but even then, I don't know how much maturity and whether that maturity is useful for a lot of businesses. So so the jury's out. I do think though that, and again, if I look at trends, so I have a client who only hires people. He does not look at any other score, but maths, you must get a B plus and above.
Okay.
Doesn't hire anyone less than that, right?
Okay.
And I'm not saying he's right or wrong. We're not here to discuss whether the person is right or
Yeah.
wrong. We're here to, I guess my question is, how did he get there, or she? It's because he needed to very quickly know that he can teach you analytical thinking. And that was his signal. We're not here to discuss the merits and demerits.
Yeah.
This is the signal I have. I feel like if you have a B plus in math, if I tell you I dump some Excel things, if I tell you to pivot tables and stuff, there's a higher chance you'll understand than someone with a D. Okay? First, I don't have a B plus, so I can't even be hired in that company. There's no way. So me, and and quite a lot of the population. So a lot of, and that's just one. But analytical thinking has become key, especially for local businesses, because for local businesses they operate a lot on gut data, because gut is still data. It's just data over time that has not been recorded, right? So they've operated for a very long time on gut and instinct and data that has passed on from one family member to another, from one scenario to another. But with time, they know they need to offload. And offloading means finding more organized ways of making decisions. And that's why insights and data come in. Or they've had so much data, but they've never actually used it to make decisions because their gut was strong and probably is still strong, but they need to be able to leave day-to-day operations to sort of the next crop of leaders. So analytical thinking is not going anywhere. If anything, it's becoming really central. And I think for me, this is my signal whether someone is analytical. Again, it's a bias. But if your CV has no number, then I judge you immediately. Immediately, I judge you. I won't judge you for a B plus, but I'll judge you if your CV has zero number, zero, even one. It can be a percentage. It just has to have quantitative data, right?
Yeah.
I judge you
Yep.
immediately. So it's those small things, because I'm like, if in 2 pages, you can't give me one quantitative item to help me. Like if you're in HR to just say, I manage an FT of 200 and this, just break it down. Immediately I'm like, tutasumbuana. Which
Mm,
again is a bias, but that's not going anywhere, right? I
yeah.
think what is might be undervalued a bit is systems thinking. Um, Again, people who turn chaos into routines. I always say a lot of family businesses have, I call it organized chaos. Things are disorganized, but things are moving. Don't confuse yourself and think things are not moving. They're going to make money, they're going to make a profit. But it's not as systemic and organized as you think. So people who have a systems thinking mentality, who can get into chaos but very quickly turn it around. And I think there's a post I did about being in the mud. So learning not to sit in the mud and just be pretty, but sit in the mud and very quickly figure out how am I getting out of this mud. I think that is undervalued. And I think one of your panel, the person attending this already, but commercial literacy. I think commercial literacy doesn't have to be in sales. It's so undervalued from HR to finance to IT, unit economics, contribution margin, trade-offs, just starting to understand why a decision is being made and how the impact of a decision on the bottom line or the top line. If you ever ask me a skill set that we all need to build at a certain age, I think for me it's commercial acumen. I think there's not enough of that going around. Um, and obviously, again, cross-cultural fluency. And for me, culture is across generations, it's across races, it's across quite a lot of things. You're working with a generation, I mean, there's about 40 years of us at workplace at the same time. You're now working with remote teams. So that fluency, I think it's a bit undervalued, but maybe because we can't measure yet. Yeah. So those are some.
I think if I can just add on to what you're saying, when it comes to skills, top skills that actually demand now and going forward. Let's start with the first, analytical thinking, as you rightly said. We have resilience, flexibility, and agility. We have leadership and social influence. We have technological literacy, and that's including of AI, big data, cybersecurity. Creative, creative and critical thinking, curiosity and lifelong learning.
Yeah.
Aspects to do with motivation, self-awareness, emotional intelligence. EQ is a big deal. Yeah. We have environmental and sustainability mindset, that's stewardship, systems thinking, and complex problem solving. Now, skills that are decreasing or becoming less central. We have manual dexterity, endurance, and precision, obviously because of automation that is coming in.
But see, even for that, I have,
Debatable.
very debatable, extremely debatable, because the amount, if I just look at the amount of data centers being built across the world because of AI,
Yeah.
but also those skills, they might be Uko Europe, but here I would encourage everybody to actually have some skill set around manual dexterity just because of we are going to be the labor force of the world. But I guess that's a different discussion. So that one is a big nuanced, yeah.
Yeah. Routine cognitive tasks, traditional clerical and secretarial jobs, and last
Yeah.
but not least, over reliance on formal qualifications in hiring.
That's controversial.
Very controversial,
For
which
sure.
actually brings me to the point that you mentioned, when it comes to years of experience. Just because sometimes when you say on a social aspect, just because you're old doesn't mean that you're wise. Now, you're
No.
in the work office, you have boomers, X, millennials, and Gen Zs, and alphas are coming. And I
Yeah.
remember a time when, VUCA was the big talk in town. The other big talk in town was millennials. The same way we are talking about Gen Zs is the same way millennials had
Yeah, time.
their. So, how do we how do we ensure that across these generations that are in the workplace, we are not only enabling, former generations. It doesn't mean that because they've not been born in a tech savvy world, it doesn't mean that they do not have, skills to offer. It's just that maybe what they were used to is definitely not what is going to work in the present day and age. At the same time, the current modern generation is so fast paced that they actually don't take the time to slow down and think things through. So, how do we balance this talent market that is very diverse in terms of technology exposure to, the skill set that they're building, but also how do we balance that or transition that when it comes to matters experience?
Who? I think so. I'm almost 50, and we are many at this age of almost 50. We are the ones who are supposed to be leaving the workplace. We are. So you'll hear me telling my team, "Ooh, we are. Mm-mm. How old is he?" And we don't even have to see the age. I can. I just need to see you went to you finished. You cleared university in 2001, 2000. I just know this one is my age. This one is a no. And we say it every day. This is a no. This one, no. That client will not agree. And again, because we have ways and signals that as hiring managers we've gotten used to. I don't think the older generation necessarily help themselves. And I want to speak specifically for Africa. I think we come in with a lot of ego. We come in with, I know what to do, and I need to teach you children what to do. A very digitally native, digitally agile workplace that is almost pushing you out, right? And so I think it's the onus is, I think if there's a generation that really need to chill, like we really need to just slow down and adapt. But we are spending more time judging the others because we feel like we are now the firstborns in from a work perspective, and we can, especially for Gen Xers. And I'm speaking mostly for Gen Xers. But we are more and more. I just find clients discriminating against older, and it's not their fault. It's even when you see them coming into interviews, a younger person will come being very curious, ask questions. Another person will come and say, I know what they're looking for. I don't have any questions. Already that mentality for me is, oh, I can see why clients struggle. It's because we come in with very set, I've done this before. As I said, you have templates that probably are not working. They stopped working 20 years ago. But it's because we lived with, these are the templates we've been using. We think that there are templates that will continue to be used. And the audacity of people not to take my templates. So for me, that's number one, especially Gen X. I find us a bit more lacking in our fluid intelligence and probably a bit too much crystallized intelligence that this is how things should be done. And therefore, in the workplace, and especially a workplace that is very youth centric, like Kenya and Africa, we might actually be out of jobs faster than the older workplace in Europe, just because if we don't change our mindset, we are going to be out sooner than others. In terms of all the other generations, I don't even see it so much as generational. I think it's just a cycle. I think it's an age cycle where one generation comes in, the other one comes in. We are complaining about Gen Alpha now. I'm sure millennials will complain about, sorry, Gen Zs, I'm sure millennials will complain about Gen Alpha. I think it's just a cycle. All of us have, I'm sure people complained about Gen Xs, my generation when it was our time and we were the digital natives. Well, we were really immigrants at that time because we were sort of into tech. Yeah,
Now, how do we avoid ageism bias?
I think it's human. Bias is human.
Yeah, but in
I don't know if we can avoid reducing bias. Because and this is controversial in many ways. Because biases are formed by preconceived ideas, some correct, some not, right? The people I speak to, a hiring manager, they just want their work to be done. They want their problem to be solved, right? I have hiring managers who hire people who are 60 years old. It doesn't matter to them.
Yeah.
The person comes, they're agile, they're learning agility, they've been keeping themselves up. They're not bothered. But if they come in very stoic and, in a very, very structured, or when they come in younger and immature, that shines through. I think as hiring teams, as long as we stick to the core, what problem is this role solving? Like literally just what problem is this role solving? What are the skill sets needed for this role? Even that alone, we will reduce a lot of bias because you can be able to say, what does age have to do with this problem? If this person pivoted, let's say from 45 to 55, they've been doing this problem and they're doing it well, are you able to justify and select them? But because sometimes our hiring is very fuzzy, it's about education qualifications, which I've never understood why it's there. It's about years of experience, there's no predictive validity to years of experience and work, then it becomes very noisy. So I would say reduce the noise, distill it to the key problems that the role is trying to solve. I would say 50% of your biases will be over. Yeah.
Brilliant.
I'll give an example. So I had someone the other day, I had a hiring manager interview someone and said, hey, did you see they didn't even, they had slacks. So he expected them to dress in a certain way. But I told him, so I understand. Is there something else related to the skill set? Were they missing something that was related to the problem you want to solve? In a nice way. So it was very polite and said, okay, so let's go back to the skill set. Did they miss any aspects of the skill set? And he said no. And so it helped him go back to what are we here for? Let's focus on
Yeah.
what the problem this role needs to solve. If the problem the role needs to solve involved not wearing slacks, we would have addressed that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I love that. I really do. Now, which brings me to the next point. From your experience, which skills are employers still undervaluing or might regret overlooking in the future? Considering that at the moment, it's analytical thinking, adaptability, emotional intelligence, etc., that are most in demand today. What are we overlooking?
Ooh, I think systems, I don't know whether we are overlooking. So you will find them assessing for it, but because there's no quantitative way to assess it, they don't. And one is systems thinking. So I find a lot of managers, so all of them have had to find a language and a signal for systems thinking. So it will not be in the JD, it will not be anywhere, but it's the thing they're assessing, the first thing they're assessing in a candidate. They look at a CV and say, this person has been in one company for 17 years, I'm not hiring them. This person has been in one role for 6 years, that shows lack of ambition, that shows things, right? Because intuitively they know that systems thinking will probably get you promoted faster. So it's just helping them find language and decoding systems thinking in a way that actually is surfaced in a JD, is surfaced in some of the experiences. I think that's what I would say. The other one would be decision making. And I know, I don't think they underestimate it. Again, it's one of those where because we don't have a quantitative way of analyzing, it's just one of those things we know are important, but how to quantify that in an environment is hard. And I want to speak more for local companies. So if you go into if you're from a multinational moving into a local company or a family business, there's no mothership to help you with decisions. The decision rests with you. And in a day, you're making like 25 decisions, 30, 50, 100. If your revenue is 2 billion a month, you're probably making 2 billion micro decisions. I'm exaggerating, but you get my point. Work stops with you, right? And so the ability for managers to find ways to and language to code that into an interview so that they're able to ask questions like, tell me about a decision you made. Who makes decisions? What type of decisions have you made in the last 6 months? Give me the numbers, the quantity, the capex, the impact of those decisions, so that and then really drill deep and understand what was that. Were they making the decisions, or were they just signing off, or were they even completely bringing the idea but not making the decision? I think that's the second one for me that I feel it's not undervalued, but more undermeasured, for lack of a better word. Yeah.
Makes sense. Now, let's go to the human touch. Okay.
Mhm.
In your line of work, how do you balance speed and efficiency with empathy and connection in the hiring process?
I think hiring managers, being one of them, are always in a hurry, right? You want someone immediately tomorrow, today.
Yeah.
Um, and as a recruiter, your role is to try and see how quickly you can move without necessarily impacting, as you rightfully say, impacting sort of the outcomes of that. I think as recruiters, learning to standardize where we can as much as possible. So having very, very standard templates and everything that makes it easy, but also just personalize how. So standardize where and personalize how. So what that means on sort of a day to day is just helping a hiring manager almost look at the impact of their decision. Say, for example, it's a completely brand new role that they've never hired before. So let's say they're looking for an AI engineer and they want it in 3 weeks. So because you know the landscape and the map, you're able to really guide them and help them understand, like, yeah, no, this is going to take 6 months. And here is why, right? And here's how I'm going to help you go through that process. Um, but if you had standardized a lot of other roles, it would make it easy. And one thing recruiters we don't do well, and even I don't think I do this really well. I think I know places like Google do this amazingly, which is the recruiters have a continuous pipeline of candidates. Like by the time someone is resigning, they probably have three other candidates waiting. That would make the process so much faster for hiring managers because they're just folks on the bench waiting for any eventualities. But again, that needs headcount, that needs manpower. Half the time an internal recruiter is juggling 95 roles. They don't even know where the last JD is and who is joining. Adding pipeline and adding strategic talent acquisition and strategic pipeline development, I think you will just overwhelm them. But I think for me, that is the fastest way to actually be efficient in recruitment. Yeah.
Now, when it comes to actually talent pipelines, at the same time, you can actually have talent pipelines for existing roles, maybe because you expect to increase your headcount, or as you said, someone can resign. At the same time, you can find yourself, you have the right talent, but for example, your attrition rate is not a problem. So your people are not leaving. So how do you keep people interested with your brand without losing the hope of, oh my word, I'll never join Kaziworks because guys are so happy there. Unless they are expanding, unless they're scaling, I'll always be on this pipeline. So how do you keep those candidates engaged?
I think any company that has such a long attrition doesn't have recruitment anyway, because you don't need recruiters in that sense. I would imagine you don't need recruiters. Most people who need recruiters have a revolving door of, of folks who are leaving and others coming in. I think simple things. I know people who do newsletters every quarter.
Yeah.
I know people who, when they have an open day where anyone is allowed to come in, they actually invite the people they consider in their strong pipeline to come. So there's so many ways of doing it, subtle, small ways. I know others who every quarter they must have called everybody in their pipeline, check in how you're doing, even if it's every 6 months. Here is some progress about us. This is what we're happening. Also calling to ask for references. If they're in your top three pipeline, they have references. But just keeping in touch. But that's what I'm saying. It's a full-time job. Not many people are able to do that
Yeah.
to the level and capacity that they should. Yeah.
Now, on to the next question. Candidates often
Yes.
say the recruitment experience shapes how they view a brand. What small but powerful changes can organizations make to improve that experience? You've rightly said, like, if you have a really beautiful pipeline, you can keep them engaged by that constant communication, giving them front row seats when you're having, say, product demos, etc., for them to understand the product or the business even better. What else can we do to have a really positive candidate experience when it comes to talent acquisition?
Okay. So first of all, as an employer, what do you have control over? Hiring, job hunting is an extremely emotional process. First of all,
Yeah.
It's an emotional process. Only one person is going to be happy, the one who gets the job.
Yeah.
Everybody else is going to be unhappy. So that you can't control. There's going to be someone grumbling. Whether you, for as long as you're hiring and you're hiring one person out of their thousand, someone is going to be unhappy. So that's just a natural risk you're going to take anyway. So, but how do you minimize the impact of that? And I think it's small things. So for me, and especially for us in Kazi Works, we regret everybody, every single person. But why is because we don't advertise our jobs. So the volumes coming in are not as ridiculous as others. So it makes it easy for us to have a personal touch with people. Most people I hear the most, there's two, three inflection points that people complain about the most. We got to the end, they made us do so much work, and then they send us an email. Anybody that you've spent more than 2 hours with, you owe a phone call. Everybody knows there's going to be one final candidate. I don't think that's the problem. Just call me, right? Just 2 hours. If you've made me see three people, that's 3 hours. Please call me. That's the least you can do. Especially it means I'm a silver medalist or a bronze medalist, meaning that you might want me again.
Yeah.
You want me to maintain that positive feel about your brand, call me, right? Again, the others try, and this is a hard one, and I don't blame recruiters for it, especially if you don't have a strong ATS or if you just have 35 roles at any one point. Yeah. But also 50% of roles are put on hold because of just how volatile the market is. So sometimes the roles are on hold. You don't even know. So also just telling them, hey, listen, this role is on hold. That alone, someone would still be unhappy because it is an emotional process. It's about money. It's about their bills. It's a very emotional. Job hunting is emotional.
Yeah.
But small things like those will reduce how the person feels about that. Yeah.
And you'll have helped them manage expectations.
Yes. But I understand why recruiters don't do it. First of all, no one requires them to because it's an employer's market. You're desperate, you will be angry, but you'll still apply because you're desperate, right?
Yeah.
You can say, oh, me, I'll never eat Farmer's Choice products, but you'll still eat that sausage. Also, you will still apply when the role comes up, but you can minimize that as much as possible. Yeah.
Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. Now, as someone who's worked closely with both hiring managers and candidates, what human truths about hiring do you think leaders tend to forget?
The person was not a culture fit. There's nothing like no culture fit. Culture fit means he's not one of us. So again, we haven't found a way to code culture. But there seems to be a universal truth that culture means either not my color, not my school, not from my socioeconomic background, not my tribe, not my religion. It's just we're not gelling. I think for me, so when someone says, ooh, culture fit wise, and then you just dig a bit deeper, you'll realize, no, I just didn't feel them. But it's usually a culture, but the code is not one of us,
Yeah.
right? Um, and I understand humans, it's important for our survival to be with people who are like us. But sometimes the people who are like you, and you can see when you fire someone 3 months later who was a culture fit, does not mean they will do solve the problem you're trying to look for, right? So again, going back to focus on what problem was I trying to solve, and can this person help me solve that problem? It's very clinical. Most married managers would die before they become that clinical. But I'm not asking for you to be 100% clinical, at least 60. Yeah. So remove, especially the culture one. I find it's code for not, yeah, not one of us. Yeah. That's probably the one I can think about.
The interesting thing is, yes, not one of us brings, but what comes to mind is anyone that can challenge, this is how we do things here, is so not welcome. And I think that is what kills innovation in an organization because you're just looking for homogeneity. You just want to flow. But when you have a problem there, you don't want people to think out of the box and you wonder why it is not happening. It's simply because you curated that recipe for yourself and you don't know how to dig yourself out of the hole.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as we come to the tail end of this conversation, yeah, if you could redesign the hiring process from scratch, what one thing would you keep and what would you throw out? I think culture fit is on its way out.
Culture fit is on its way out. Feeling warm seats is something I would throw out. Um, I would say 50. The reason why roles are put on hold is because there was no one at the beginning, upstream, who asked, should we build, buy, or borrow for this role? There was no conversation around, is this role, will this person be occupied 100% of their time with this role? Or is this role half? Do we have to hire full time for this role? Can we hire a gig person? Can we hire a consultant? Or can we, so there's a huge generation who are looking not to, they don't, they like their open relationships, they want to work with you 3 days a week, but the hiring manager mindset is still, someone resigns, fill the seat. There's no, okay, let me not fill a warm seat. Do I really need fully this? Do I need to buy? Do I need to build internally, or do I need to borrow for now for another 6 months or 1 year until I understand where the business is going? I think I wish that was a bit more active. And also, it's the role of HR. I don't know whether HR will do a good job enough of actually helping hiring managers understand the strategic aspect of build, buy, borrow from a role perspective. Yeah.
Very, very well put. In consideration one, when I look at organizations that are donor funded, as an example, it makes no sense to give a full time contract if it's donor funded and it's for a certain period of time. You
Yeah.
just give a contract for that period of time and you don't have to worry about what will you do with this person when the contract ends or funding is withdrawn. And at the same time, I think we also need to embrace aspects to do with gig economy. A lot of some of the clauses that we have, and when let me take a few steps back. When COVID happened, uncertainty became the order of the day because a lot of like aviation, people are not flying. You have a really good job, but pandemic just put everyone on hold, and it got people thinking of one source of income cannot sustain me if the rug is pulled beneath my feet. So how can we also challenge the aspect of yes, you are employing, but also having the understanding that these people have lives beyond your contract. You don't own them. They actually have other interests away from that.
I think that's a nuance that's still growing, but also, again, taking responsibility as a contractor to manage your boundaries as much as possible. I know someone will say, but oh, but the power is with the employer. Yes. But also learning, maybe you've learned your first one, your second one, you start having guardrails around how you structure that conversation is very important. But also deciding, are you doing this because you're looking for a full-time job, or are you doing this because you want to remain always a consultant? Because if you want to always remain a consultant, then you need guardrails. But if this is your path into getting full-time into that employer, you kind of would need to put in more work and more effort for them to see, okay, this person is going over and above. Yeah. So it's a nuanced one.
Now, when it comes to replacing talent, so there are occasions whereby, for example, I resign and you take up extra responsibilities with your current role, and then down the line, maybe 6 months down the line, before that role is filled, they end up bringing external party to take up the role that you are acting as. And most times you will find people feeling offended by that because they fail to understand if I could hold fort for that period, be it 6 months, 9 months, and I was delivering, then why did my employer proceed to bring in an external party that I'll be expected to train? Obviously, my engagement, my motivation is going to take a serious dip. Why do such scenarios come about, and what are your thoughts on that?
Happens every day. I think because I like having conversations around what agency the person has and what is in your control and what is out of your control. I feel like for this, what is in your control is to make sure as you're, yes, there's a bit of excitement and jubilation in the between to act in a senior role, but slow down, find out what key deliverables. Almost, I remember there was a time I was told to act in a certain position. I think I was in career connections. So they asked me to act for I think 3 to 6 months. And I remember Madeline put in a list and told me these are all the expectations of a lead consultant. This is where you score, and these are the 4 things that you've not reached. So it was a very structured conversation. So if you want to be promoted to lead consultant, these are the 3 things, 4 things I need you to really prove because they are 2 out of 3. The others are 3 out of 5. Good. You don't expect 5 out of 5 because again it means you've outgrown the role, right? So 3 out of 5 is just well, 1 and 2. If you don't meet them, then it means we might have to get someone externally, right? So she took control of that conversation. But nothing stops you as an employee of taking control, right? Because if you don't take control, then you don't be surprised when 6 months later someone else comes. It's also possible you might take control every month, check in, and still be surprised. That might still happen, but you will have reduced your chances of it by possibly 70%. But also, you've learned how to fight for yourself. Sometimes I tell people, fight so that you gain experience to do it another time. It's also a conversation I have about salary negotiations. I say every opportunity you miss not to discuss salary negotiations is an opportunity for a skill you have failed yourself to learn. So have the conversation for g- putting boundaries around that. What does it mean for me to be in this role? If I needed the next role, what do I need to have done for me to? What are the things I'm good at now? What skills do I need to still brush up if you were to give me this role? Yeah.
We have a question here. Some employers still include non-competition clause in their employee contracts to prevent them from going to competitors when they exit the organization. What are your thoughts on that?
So non-competes are illegal in Kenya. Um,
Illegal.
yeah,
Legal or
they don't stand in a court of law. Yes. However, it again for me when you're dealing with an employer's market, they will do it. If you need a job, you'll sign. I remember I signed, even when I knew very well it was illegal. I still signed because me, I'm happy to work here. So I can't even sit here and start preaching and telling you don't sign. Sign, man, get that job. If you really need to leave, and depending on your relationship with the employer, because the only reason why non-compete becomes an issue is if you leave and you're going to the direct competition and they get surprised. Most employers just tell them, listen, I just need you to know I've resigned and I'm going here. Just FYI. That's all. But when they hear it, I think when they hear it from the grapevine is when it really acts them. But we still all sign every day, and I don't think it's going to stop anytime soon. But I don't think they hold in a court of law. But don't go there thumping your chest and saying, I'm not signing because it's illegal. You're not going to be employed.
But then at the same time, someone will say, I am not going to tell my current employer of where I'm going because
Because they spoil it for you.
they're going to mess it up. And it has happened. I know of people that, the moment their employer knew where they were going, that's how fast that offer letter was withdrawn. So it has to be two way. If I am, expressing it out of goodwill, then you also have to extend professional courtesy. I'm not going
Yeah.
burning bridges for me, but
Yeah,
you and
but
I
again,
know very
you can't
well some
control.
employers,
Yeah, you can't control the other side.
yeah.
Yeah, but also as a recruiter, you have a problem with one of your employers. I'll give you a yes. If you have employment with 2 of your employers, by the third one, I'm judging you. Kwani you, how unfortunate are you? The third one, I am 100% judging you. It's no longer about the employers. I'm starting to judge you directly.
You're the problem.
Yeah, I didn't say those words, but I'm like, sir, why is everyone against you? Yeah.
You can't help but think it.
Sorry?
Now, I mean, you can't help but wonder
Really?
why is it that
Yes.
the formula, the result is always the same?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. What will differentiate great talent acquisition teams from average ones in the next 5 years?
I think sourcing. I really think sourcing. You need to uncover candidates with the unique skill set that other people can't get. I think sourcing. Remember, sourcing has now been democratized. When I was younger, we tulikuwa tunaangalianga kwa yellow pages, you try and find the person, you call the company. Now with tools, all of us have access to almost it's been democratized, all of us have access. But your ability to be able to find very nuanced, different candidates and the ones raising their hand every day on LinkedIn, I think is going to make the difference. And
No,
that's a
that's
skill that ni nadra. It's lacking.
in consideration that you're very passionate about sales. If I may digress slightly,
Yep.
every person is a salesperson. How you show up. Now, this question is about great talent acquisition teams. Now, what makes a great talent? What will make you as Doris go, I've seen Rosalind's profile and damn, she makes a good candidate. What do you think? What are those attributes that, great talent acquisition people are looking for in a candidate?
I think it depends. I really think it depends. I think, first of all, please don't rely on acquisition people to find you a job. We are very lazy. We are very lazy. I need to say this because I don't think you guys understand how lazy we are. We are so lazy. We are trying to find someone with 80% of the skill set. 80%. We do not like the hustle of finding wildcards or finding people who might fit, but we need panel beating. Too much work. We want to find you the perfect person. We are lazy. So first of all,
Plug and play.
plug and play. So half the time it's a lie, but we want to plug and play. So if you see an advert that a recruiter has put up and you don't fit 70%, don't waste your time. Trust me, we will not shortlist you because we are lazy. It's too much work to understand you and your problems. Yes, we need wildcards, but most recruiters are very lazy, so we will not. Number one. So relying on, I always say, don't rely on recruiters more than 30% of your job search strategy. Not more than 30%. The rest should be finding hiring managers, talking to the company, and leaving recruiters alone because recruiters, we are a lazy bunch from that perspective. But if I look at your profile, for me, I'm looking at your profile in relation to matching it to the role my client is looking for. That's all. So because there's no one way, so one of my clients is looking for a B plus. So I'll have to check alifanya course gani, nini nini. I'll have to check. We have a lot of sleuthing skills. On this end, one client is looking for someone who I have a client who only has people who every 2 years are being promoted. That's his rule. If he leaves, that shows ambition and motivation, right? That's another one. That's a bias. That's
Yeah.
another one. I have a client who does not hire from multinationals. So everybody has their bias. So there's no one uniform way that I can tell you present in this way. All I'll tell you is your job strategy cannot be entirely based on talking to recruiters or applying for jobs. It's not going to take. You will be very frustrated.
No, I think that's really good advice. And, the understanding of it's a very competitive market. You are trying to fill that job with the shortest time
Yes,
possible.
yes,
You also have metrics
yes,
to meet. So
absolutely.
you're not there to brood and babysit. It is okay. Who's showing up and who's the right candidate for me. Now the final question here is, what's one piece of advice you'd give HR and business leaders trying to future proof their hiring practices today?
I think so. There's one of the companies I'm helping build their hiring strategy from training the HR team to training the full 100 managers on this. And I think one thing we are spending more time is on what we call the thrivers profile, which is for where the business is now, who thrives, just a thrivers profile. And for each company, it's different. For a company that is growing and scaling, it might be speed, it might be half-baked decisions. For a company that is trying to, keep their market share and make sure no one is getting from them, it might be risk money, whatever it is. I would almost say we don't spend enough time understanding what's a thriver's profile for us and what is a survivor profile. Who are those who are failing? So almost every year taking stock, we hired 25 people. Out of those, these are thrivers. What is in their DNA? What's the common denominator? And these are survivors. What's the common denominator? I think that is more data centric, and it will help them realize, oof, this is a thriver profile here. When you interview someone, when they have these skills, chances are they'll stay here longer and thrive.
Now, using that, the Thrivers profile, so that's on recruiting. But how can you also duplicate that? Obviously, you will tweak it to when it comes to existing ones, because at the end of the day, if you are to map talent, there are those that will stay, there are those that are on their way out, and there are those that are sitting on the fence. So, how do you also ensure that, just like when you're doing engagement, ENTS, you have your promoters, you have your detractors. So, how do you also have your Thrivers profile to existing work stuff? And what does that translate to the business?
So I have it's so I have so many schools of thought on employees and their tenure and why they stay. So on one end, I like so there's parts of I hold both sides of Elon Musk. There's parts of the man I actually like, and there's parts that I want to throttle every day. But the parts of him that I like in his new book is around him. He likes fresh talent. He actually doesn't believe in keeping people for too long. He believes that you stay after a certain time, you start regurgitating the same ideas, and it frustrates both. And then
Yeah.
there's a NVIDIA CEO who keeps everybody he hires, right? He doesn't believe in hiring people. He believes in them staying and staying for life. This question is hard for me because I am in this spot where I listen to something like this makes more sense, but then I listen to something like this is a value system I would like to attribute to and attest to. But I think the reality as a recruiter, if I reach out to 35 candidates who are suitable for a role, only 5 of them will not want to listen to me, and they'll tell me they're happy. The rest 30 will say, I want to listen. That ratio is too high. I think the era for thinking that employees are loyal is the same era we thought employers will keep us for life, and yet every day they retrench us. I think trying to be in the present, in the moment, and building systems that surpass an employee life cycle is more important than trying to see how do I keep this person as long as possible. Because man, I don't know which candidate I approach. Even the ones who have been there for 3 months, they'll tell you, I've been here 3 months, but let me listen to this role. So all employees are open. I think to try and keep them there, I think it's a hard one, and I don't know whether I think it's a lost cause. I think be present, be in the moment, build systems that go over and above an
Yeah.
employee than necessarily. And that is, I'll give an example in sales. I tell people, even if someone stays for you in 8 months in sales, but the CRM is up to date, that the next person can come in and plug and play because CRM is active, all conversations recorded, so that you're not wondering who is this client because everything has been recorded and there's a good governance.
Yeah.
I think it's employee retention is hard at the moment. Yeah.
I like the fact that you said systems that surpass the present. You need to think ahead. And that's why, even this topic for today, it's all a matter of, are you future ready? Or are you just brooding and will react as and when? Doris, I cannot thank you enough. I know you and I can have a conversation from here till the sun turns pink. But I am so grateful for your insights. I'm so grateful for the fact that, we're not just talking about the norm, but also challenging what we think we are comfortable with and what we really need to rethink. What are your parting shots? What's your parting shot?
Um, I think hiring is changing but remaining the same. I think there's a lot of buzz, but it's just the recipe. The ingredients are not changing. And with that in mind, I think there are people who are like, what should I be doing? I just think chill. It's going to taste the same. The recipe might be changing. One, two things might be added, but it's still that chicken stew. Yeah.
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 Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. For everyone that joined us via LinkedIn or YouTube, I cannot thank you enough. Feel free to reach out. Reach out to us via DMs or, comment. Doris and I are more than happy to engage. Doris, thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wishing everyone a lovely evening. Thank you for joining us for this session of Unplugged with Ross, and I'll see you on the next one. Good night, everyone. Bye.